Chapter 21. Sig and I were pulling weeds out front and talking about life, the value of hard work, and obeying the law when a car raced by, and we were enveloped in a blanket of dust. I said, when the road was washed out, at least we didn't have to put up with that. The residents had to make a concerted effort to finally deed the road over to the county, at which time the name was changed to 145th Avenue. After that, the county sent out a crew and patched up the road enough so city folks could race up and down the hill. "That's not city folks, Mom," Sig moaned. "That's Ray Carter, and he is only 12 and he gets to drive. Everybody in the valley drives except me. Why can't I drive?" I'd heard the story a dozen times, and there was truth to what he said. Several of his acquaintances were allowed to drive 2 or 3 years before they could even get a learner's permit, surprisingly by parents who were otherwise decent, law-abiding citizens. I was often tempted to give in. Saying no is hard when everyone else is doing it. The fact that Sig was the tallest kid in the valley didn't make it any easier. Nor did the fact that he had recently received an honor from the students at school. The glow on his face at that time was still fresh in my mind. He had come home grinning from ear to ear. "Guess what, Mom? I've been elected Sports King." "Sports King? What's that?" "Well, the school has a spring carnival." "I know, I'm supposed to take a cake." "They elect a queen and a king." Sig had explained how each room elected a princess. "Then the princesses," he began to blush, "elect the king." I was happy for him. "Sig, this is answered prayer, isn't it? Remember you thought the kids didn't like you and we prayed about it?" Sig smiled. "Yeah." "Well, it looks like the kids like you now, at least the girls." Sig blushed even more. "But promise me you won't get so high and mighty that you won't take out the garbage, which, by the way, is full." He had leaned down to pull the pail out from under the sink. As I sat on the rockery contemplating my reply to Sig's question, I realized that he had been happier in town than he was in Happy Valley. He'd had good friends there. He'd been more mobile. He had little jobs, peddling boxes of Christmas cards or birthday cards on his bike. He also had a paper route which he had taken over from his cousin Bud when he was only 9 and in the 4th grade at Grout Elementary. I had learned to appreciate the dedication it took for a boy to get up before dawn, pick up his papers, roll them up, and peddle them door to door when I had to take over his job during an illness, which his doctor diagnosed as mononucleosis. What had surprised me most was that a number of his customers, who were old folks at the Odd Fellows home on Holgate Street, praised him for his kindness. But what would I be teaching him if I was a party to his breaking the law? My first impulse was to yell a variation on the theme, "You can't drive because I said you can't." But the experts were saying the parent should reason with the child. I wasn't ready to reason. I felt brutish in denying him, but for his own good, I had to. "Sig, everyone has limitations in their life. For some, it's the color of their skin. I just read about a man who went down south to discover for himself the conditions under which the Negro lives. Being white, he got along well, but when he changed the color of his skin by injections, he could only get the lowest kind of work. Hotels wouldn't accept him. He even had a hard time buying food." Sig sat quietly listening, maybe just because it got him out of weeding. I continued, "There are other limitations. I played at the Shriners Crippled Children's Hospital on Christmas Eve. One excited little girl asked me to guess what she got for Christmas. I expected her to tell me about a beautiful doll, but she told me she had a new leg and was going to learn to walk. I told him about Helen Keller, who was blind, deaf, and mute. She can never look out over the green fields or hear the birds sing, but she says there are so many interesting things in the world that she doesn't take time to brood over things she doesn't have." Sig was getting bored, but I wasn't through. You may think that the happiest people in the world are those with the least limitations, but this isn't true. The happiest are those who recognize their limitations and accept them. Sig, you've had very few limitations in your life. You have good health and intelligence, but right now you have this limitation. You won't be able to drive until you're 15. And regardless of how other people face the problem, I'm not going to let you drive." Sig thought for a long minute, then went back to weeding. When Corey found out what a great weeder Sig was, he offered to pay him for pulling Tansy in the pasture. "It's bad for the animals. I'll give you a cent for every plant you pull up." When Sig reported on his work and asked Corey for payment, Corey expressed surprise at how many he had pulled. Sig explained that Sam Carter had helped him. "Gosh, how did you manage that? Sam is the laziest kid in the valley." I paid him a half cent a weed. We all laughed at his ingenuity.